Weapons have existed as long as humankind. For millennia, they have determined the destiny of generations. Weapons bring suffering and death. They show what humans can inflict upon other humans. But they're also intended to keep the peace and pave new ways for technology. For thousands of years, humans have fought to rule the seas. 3 weapons significantly altered war on water. Using unique experiments, we demonstrate how conflicts play out on the oceans. The torpedo, an insidious and extremely effective weapon.
It changed warfare. It allowed the little guy to sink the big guy.
Mighty ship cannons rule the sea for centuries.
You can imagine the horror of being on the receiving end of 50 of those balls. This sort of war is no picnic.
The mysterious Byzantine flamethrower, Greek fire.
It's going to set you on fire, it's going to set your ship on fire, it's going to set your siege equipment on fire.
Greek fire destroys entire enemy fleets. But how can fire burn on the water? What's the secret to their formula? 677 AD, war over Constantinople. Muslim Arabic invaders lay siege to the Byzantine capital. Ships equipped with catapults blocked the city walls, cutting off all supplies to citizens under attack. The result, a famine.
In the 7th century, Constantinople is the city. It's the largest city in the world. It's the capital of what is still a very powerful East Roman or Byzantine Empire, and it's the gateway to Europe. So this is a very serious attack which could have had enormous geopolitical consequences.
It's war of religions. Since the death of the Prophet Muhammad in 632, Islam has spread rapidly. In 635, Arab warriors conquer Syria. In 637, they seize modern-day Iraq, followed by Persia, Palestine, and Egypt. In the north, the Islamic push for expansion clashes with the Byzantine Empire and its capital, Constantinople, the bulwark of Orthodox Christianity. A brilliant inventor named Kallinikos gives the Byzantines hope. No portrait of him exists, but we know that he worked as an architect and probably was from present-day Lebanon. He presents Constantine IV with a new weapon, a mysterious substance that, when ignited, burns bright with a broiling heat. Greek fire. With it, the besieged hope that they can finally break through the Muslim blockade. The exact composition of Greek fire is still unknown. Weapons expert Stephen Bull wants to determine the most probable formula.
One of our most terrifying and mysterious experiments is Greek fire. Mysterious because the original recipe has been lost, and what we've had to do is bring together some of the most likely ingredients.
In Byzantium, the blend of the incendiary weapon was a state secret. Historical accounts mention amounts of sulfur, caustic lime, saltpeter, and crude oil, which at the time was referred to by its Greek name, naphtha, and extracted directly from the ground at sites in the Middle East. Mankind has consumed crude oil for thousands of years, using it early on for weapons as well. The people of the Stone Age attach arrowheads to their spears using asphalt like bitumen. In ancient times, oil was used to seal boats, and in Babylon, it was allegedly also used for illumination. The great oil boom of modern times begins in the middle of the 19th century with the drilling of the first wells. Initially, its most important use was powering petroleum lamps. As early as the 1910s, experts believed that the oil era was coming to an end. But even larger oil fields were discovered across the globe. And this oil makes a revolutionary new form of transport possible: the automobile.
In the early modern era, oil is also the fuel for war machines, for tanks and aeroplanes. Without oil, an army is just scrap metal in the middle of nowhere.
The 20th century starts off with the first motorized wars in history. The demand for oil dramatically increases. Enemy oil supplies are deliberately attacked.
When you look at history in recent times, it's always the case that whoever controls oil wells and supplies also has all the power and the potential to wage successful modern mobile wars.
A world without oil is impossible to imagine. Oil is used in the production of plastics, medicines, cosmetics, and countless other products. Global demand, around 15 billion liters of crude oil per day. It's no wonder that wars are waged over black gold, because among other reasons, armies themselves are some of the largest consumers. Oil is also the basis of Greek fire. For our experiment, Stephen Bull wants to check the proportion of the ingredients.
So let's light up this sample and see how it works. It's burning quite nicely.
But is this mixture really the Byzantines' wonder weapon? What happens when it comes into contact with water, like it did off the coast of Constantinople?
Obviously, that would be a very foolish thing to do. It seems to make the fire worse. It splutters, fades, and then gets worse again.
Since oil is the main ingredient of the fuel, it really blazes, and the ingredients make the whole thing very, very sticky. So that means that once you get it onto an enemy ship or onto a person, it sticks, and then you start to burn, and it's very difficult to get it off.
If a ship was attacked with Greek fire, it could not be extinguished with seawater. So what could stop this liquid fire?
Finally, something we would recognize from fire buckets: sand. So we're going to give sand a go.
Sand smothers the flames, but due to the issue of its weight, a large supply of sand was out of the question for the Muslim warships.
To have this stuff burning your ship, you've really got no option. Abandon ship or die.
With their difficult-to-extinguish fire, the Byzantines want to burn down the fleet of the attackers. But they face another problem. How do they manage to get the flames to reach the enemy ships? The solution is a primitive pump known as a siphon, which normally would expel a jet of water. Only instead of spitting water, it spits fire. Stephen Bull had this kind of pump recreated for our test. On the backside, it has a container for the flammable liquid. With a double-cylinder pump, the liquid moves through a pipe or hose up to the nozzle. With the help of a fire bowl, the liquid is then ignited.
So now we're doing it for real. We've got not just a small sample of Greek fire, we've got a whole siphon full. And as you can see, we're needing to take quite a few precautions. We've got fire suits and we've got a fire truck right on hand. And I'm really not quite sure how this is going to work out. And to say the least, I am a little nervous.
How dangerous is a replica Byzantine flamethrower?
Everybody ready?
we're going to go now. We can see that the ignition system is blazing away merrily at the front there, and we're ready to shoot.
2 people are necessary to operate the pump. On one side, air is sucked in. On the other, fire comes out. The fiery jet only ends when the tank is empty. Our Greek fire works. The historic mass of fire doesn't go out, even on the water.
That was pretty spectacular. We were getting a range of about 10 metres, and it takes an awful lot of effort to pump that fire. You will also notice that my colleague was readjusting the nozzle as we were going, improving the aim. There's still a little bit of interference from wind, though, I would think. Quite an experiment, and at least partially successful. But the galleys have got to be pretty close.
Could this invention really have forced the Arab fleet to flee? According to ancient reports, up to 3 Greek fire hoses were installed on Byzantine warships.
With its ability to project sticky flames, the Greek fire siphon brought a new dimension to warfare. Flame could now be used at sea. It was a terrible shock for the enemy, and the siphon also became a morale weapon, a weapon which would be kept a deadly secret.
But how long does it take until a ship goes up in flames? Our next experiment, simulating an attack on a wooden warship.
The pressure seems to be good, the wind seems to have dropped. We're in with a fighting chance.
Will Stevens' mixture burn long enough to ignite the ship's wall from 10 meters away? In no time, the ship's wall is ablaze. The burning liquid sticks to the wood. All the crew could do was watch helplessly.
So we can definitely say that that one was a complete success. The side of the enemy ship was blazing, the water was blazing. There's little doubt that the Greeks would have won this naval engagement. At that time, for water to be burning would have been quite extraordinary. It's like a nuclear weapon or something, in that it has a new effect, something that people don't understand, and it's going to be absolutely terrifying.
Equipped with Greek fire, in 678 AD, Byzantine ships advanced to face the Muslim fleet. Before the commanders can realize what's happening, their ships have caught fire. Panic erupts on board. The Arab invaders are forced to flee. Constantinople keeps its independence for the next 750 years.
It's almost as if the Byzantines had been forced to the very last extremity and they'd dug out of their catalogue the last ultimate weapon, because the only way to save the city and the whole of their empire was to deploy this weapon, and it worked.
Greek fire became one of the most feared weapons of the medieval world. Anyone would avoid a ship carrying this weapon. The only known authentic depiction of Greek fire dates back to the 12th century. The picture shows the victory of the Byzantine fleet led by Emperor Michael in the civil war against General Thomas. The secret of this wonder weapon from the Eastern Mediterranean was strictly guarded. After the Ottomans conquered Constantinople in 1453, the knowledge behind Greek fire was lost. And now another weapon triumphs and soon makes the era of British rule over the oceans possible. August 1588. Several naval battles are underway in the English Channel. On one side, Catholic Spain, ruled by King Philip II, with his armada of 130 ships armed with heavy iron cannons. Philip wants to force England to return to the Catholic faith. Above all, the Spaniards are feared for their ability of capturing ships.
The Spanish built big ships. They were relatively high out of the water. The men who commanded the ships in battle were not sailors, but soldiers. So the ships were fought essentially as mobile fighting platforms for soldiers. And the object was to close with the enemy, board and take his ship.
On the other side, Protestant England, ruled by Queen Elizabeth I. Their more agile ships are equipped with bronze cannons, which can fire from a greater distance. The English commanders know they must weaken the Spaniards from a distance. In close combat, they wouldn't stand a chance. Today, these kind of battles can be simulated on a computer with authentic ship models. But what effect did a cannonball of the time really have? Stephen Bull wants to find out, how effective were the cannons of the early modern era? A model has been recreated based on historical examples. The great powers of the time had an arsenal that ranged from fairly light cannons weighing 200 kilos to heavier examples weighing over 5 tons.
Developing over a period of 500 years, the cannon was a defining technology of the early modern era. Cannon changed both fortifications and ships, and in so doing, helped project European sea power all over the world.
In Lutsk, Ukraine, specialists have researched the construction plan of a ship cannon from the late 16th, early 17th century. Pipe length 1.5 meters, with an inner diameter of 10.6 centimeters.
What we're going to reconstruct here is a full-blown 9-pounder of the 17th century. Some of the features of our cannon will include a touch hole here and a taper bore, so the powder charge will be at this end of the barrel. What is going to be special about this cannon is that we'll be firing a ball with full charge. And if this works, its effect on a ship target could be spectacular.
Unlike 400 years ago, our cannon is not cast but milled. This is done for safety reasons. A faulty casting could cause the cannon to shatter. Only our cannonballs are cast, weighing 4.5 kilos. They cannot explode, just as they couldn't during the time of the Spanish Armada. Explosive grenades were only used later. At a test site, Stephen Bull wants to find out how accurately it can hit a dummy ship from a distance of 100 meters, and how much damage it really does.
So this is our magnificent reproduction of a naval gun from the middle of the 17th century. And unlike most reproductions of cannons, this thing can really fire the solid round shot of about 9 pounds. And we're about to find out what this could do to a ship of the period.
After 4 weeks, our cannon is ready. The target, the ship's structure 100 meters away. From this distance, can the cannon hit the side of the ship with its first shot? Or at least strike the rigging and the mast? Will the historical replica even work at all?
The principle behind cannons and smaller, simpler firearms is actually very similar. You have basically a tube that's closed one end, and you put in black powder, for example, a substance that can explode, and a projectile, and then you ignite the whole thing, which results in an explosion. Due to the sudden expansion in volume, the projectile is shot through the tube very, very quickly, and then keeps on flying in the same direction.
hält dann diese Richtung bei.
So now we're preparing the powder charges, and these are kept in this canister in one sealed bag. In goes the charge.
1.5 kilos of gunpowder is necessary per shot.
So here's the solid round shot going down into the barrel. It's a real moment of tension because I really don't know what's going to happen next. It's probably time that we fall back. Well, I've never done this before, and now they're taking aim over the barrel, aim on the target, so it's imminent.
Now we'll find out if our cannon can actually fire. Go! Will the amount of gunpowder be enough to shoot the 4.5 kilo ball 100 meters? For centuries, gunpowder was the only propellant for firearms. It was most likely invented in China in the 11th century, where it was most commonly used for fireworks as well as cannons. In the 13th century, the first gunpowder recipes were recorded in Europe. And after that, this explosive knowledge quickly spreads across the entire continent.
Gunpowder is one of those fairly basic things that gets invented in two separate places. The Chinese invent gunpowder and use it to make rockets and fireworks. The Europeans invent it and use it to make cannon to knock down castles.
Gunpowder ideally consists of 75% potassium nitrate, colloquially known as saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur. Demand increases rapidly due to the mass use of firearms in the 16th century. The main ingredient, saltpeter, is so scarce that the profession of saltpeter makers becomes more and more important. Hundreds search on behalf of their respective countries, despised by the locals. Saltpeter is formed when animal and human excrement mix with lime present in soil, occurring frequently under stables or residential buildings.
Ja, man muss natürlich immer bedenken.
You have to keep in mind that when a saltpeter boiler arrives at a village, there was always the fear that they would somehow snatch part of your house away from you, because it was clear they wanted the material, and I wouldn't welcome someone as a friend if they threatened my own home. But in this case, of course, the authorities also depend on the raw material.
At the end of the 19th century, gunpowder for firearms was replaced by the low-smoke option of cellulose nitrate. Today, we use gunpowder primarily as fuel for fireworks. Our 4.5 kilo cannonball is ready to be shot out of the cannon with 1.5 kilograms of gunpowder. But will that amount be enough for it to hit the target 100 meters away?
So the gun has recoiled all the way back from the gun port, and if you look at the gun port, it's actually damaged the gun port. And even from this distance, I can see a hole in the lower right-hand portion of the target. I think we've got to go and give that a closer look.
16th century ships have varying wall thicknesses of up to 50 centimeters. Not every shot would have been able to penetrate them.
So the first shot is clearly a hit. Clean through the target. So one shot may not sink a ship, but you can see it's gone clean through the wood. But even if the ball doesn't damage the crew, then there's going to be plenty of these. Wood splinters flying around inside the vessel, and these can cause horrible injuries.
Splitter führen häufig zu scharfen Verletzungen.
Shrapnel could cause serious injuries, deep wounds that later could also become infected.
Blutgefäße aufreißen.
Blood vessels could be ruptured or important organs could be damaged.
Wichtige Organe verletzen können.
In naval wars, the use of cannons had a powerful psychological effect on ships' crews.
You can imagine the horror of being on the receiving end of 50 of those balls and the sort of damage that it can do to a crew when you're at sea, and the primitive sort of medicine that you might be lucky enough to receive. This sort of war is no picnic.
For our next experiment, Stephen Bull wants to try a different cannonball. Will it do more damage to the ship?
So now we're going to try something different, something potentially more vicious. This is actually what you call a chain shot. It's effectively two half solid shot linked by a chain. And the idea is that the shot will whirl in the air and potentially you can cut things in half, whether this is rigging or a mast or even the human body. This is a really vicious weapon, and as far as I'm aware, it's never been test fired.
They were used for close-range attacks against the deck or mast, or even against the crew. Pirates in particular were big fans of this weapon.
With the next try, the chain shot is aimed a little higher, right at the rigging.
Actually, I'm quite concerned about what's going to happen now. A lot will depend on whether the chain stays in one piece as it leaves the barrel, or will we land up with merely fragments coming from the gun? And will the aim be disturbed by the fact that it is a whirling chain? Okay, we've got to fall back now. Let's make it about 100 yards behind the bank. Let's move.
The cannon is charged, the crew ready. Time to fire the chain shot. It's a hit. The chain shot tore a huge hole in our ship's wall.
This is interesting because the shot was aimed higher but has actually gone in lower, closer to the waterline. And I'm not sure whether the chain has whirled or whether we've got the chain and the shot all going through together in the same spot. But in any case, the hole is far, far bigger than the hole from the solid round. So anything behind this chain shot as it goes through is going to be pretty badly damaged.
Both experiments have demonstrated that even just one cannonball could seriously damage a ship. And in historical naval battles, hundreds of these weapons faced off against each other. When the Spanish Armada encounters the English fleet, they have over 100,000 cannonballs on board. So why can't they manage to defeat the English? Their downfall is a result of their range and firing speed. The Spanish cannons are stored on unwieldy racks. In the narrow below-deck area, reloading takes too long.
This is a key technical difference between the English and the Spanish fleets in the campaign of the Spanish Armada of 1588. The English can reload their heavy guns and fire them many times. The Spanish load their guns, fire them, and that's it. They're then left with only infantry weapons, small guns, muskets. And the English refuse to engage the Spanish at close quarters. They just hang off at a distance and use range to bombard the Spanish until they're disabled and have to retreat.
For several hours, the Spaniards are constantly under fire. Their strong ships receive countless hits, but only 5 vessels sink during the fierce sea battles off the south coast of England. As they retreat, the Armada is battered by a severe storm. More than 10,000 Spaniards die, and only half of their fleet manages to return home. In the decades to follow, England replaces Spain as the world's leading naval power. The British Crown secures their dominant position through several naval wars. And with control of sea trade and an ever-increasing amount of income from their colonies, the empire becomes the richest nation in Europe. In 1805, after their victory against Napoleon's fleet at Trafalgar, England becomes the undisputed superpower of the seas for an entire century. The cannon continues to be a decisive weapon for the Royal Navy. The naval gun remained relevant until the 20th century, when heavily armored ships began to be built. Thousands of cannons were melted down. Our replica will also be rendered harmless after filming. A new weapon in competition with a ship cannon hits its victims without a warning. It approaches almost silently and then causes devastating damage. The torpedo. February the 7th, 1945, near Bergen, Norway, Operation Caesar, the most secret submarine mission of World War II. To this day, it is the only known instance of a submarine that was successfully torpedoed by another submarine. The U-864, a long-range submarine of the German Navy, is headed towards Japan. But it's detected along the way. Venturer, a British submarine, tracks the propeller noise of the Germans to calculate the course of the submerged enemy. They fire 4 torpedoes, and one of them is a hit. All 73 crew members aboard the U-864 die. This is the first effective underwater duel in military history. Weapons expert Stephen Bull knows that the development of the torpedo was a lengthy and technologically complicated process. In its first decades, the torpedo is extremely expensive and barely provided any military advantage.
The torpedo is one of the most interesting weapons of naval warfare. In the 19th century, it transformed strategy because it gave small nations and small ships the ability to take on the major fleets of the world. The technology behind this weapon is curious and fascinating.
From the beginning, there were many different versions of the torpedo. For example, the German G7A torpedo of World War II is over 7 meters long and weighs 1.5 tons. The only thing it has in common with other torpedoes is self-propulsion and an explosive charge. One precursor of the torpedo is the sea mine. In the 18th century, its aim is to destroy enemy ships using a blast from below. An attractive weapon option for countries that are not the strongest at sea. But the mines are not very effective. They are stationary and will only explode if a ship runs into them. Contemporary experts refer to naval mines as a sort of defensive torpedo. But fleets all over the world still long for a functional offensive torpedo, an explosive charge that can precisely hit the enemy. On February the 17th, 1864, during the American Civil War, a so-called spar torpedo was put into use. A rod with an attached explosive device that could be rammed into an enemy ship.
During the American Civil War, the mine was also used as an offensive weapon by mounting it on the end of a long pole. The Confederate submersible, the CSS Hundley, which was essentially a man-cranked primitive submarine, 7 men sitting at a crankshaft, turning it rapidly to propel this thing, with a long pole on the front and a mine on the end of the pole, which was detonated by contact.
This makes the Confederate vessel the first submarine ever to sink an enemy ship with a torpedo during battle. And after the successful hit, the Hundley itself disappears without trace. The ship wreckage is not found again until 1995, when the mystery is finally solved. The Hundley was too close to its own torpedo. The shockwave of the explosion destroyed the sailors' lungs. The spar torpedo was a technical dead end that killed more than just the enemy. After the end of the American Civil War, two Europeans contribute to the next phase of development. British engineer Robert Whitehead and Giovanni Lupis, an officer of the Austro-Hungarian Navy. Together, they equip the torpedo with self-propulsion, using a pressure tank of highly compressed air as an energy source. Now the torpedo should be able to head for its target on its own. It has a range of 300 to 400 meters, traveling at a speed of only 11 kilometers per hour. This early form of the torpedo goes down in history as the Whitehead.
Indeed, the torpedo, as we now know it, was known as a Whitehead for the first 25, 30 years, and everybody bought the patent to use the torpedo from Robert Whitehead. It changed warfare. It meant that small vessels could sink the biggest battleships. It leveled the playing field in the way that the longbow did in medieval warfare. It allowed the little guy to sink the big guy.
Stephen Bull wants to find out how a Whitehead torpedo works in practice. Is it possible to precisely hit a target with this weapon that is more than 100 years old? As early as 1868, another innovation was added to the Whitehead torpedo.
The fish behind me, with the green and black markings, is the Whitehead torpedo of the late 1860s. It has a hydrostatic pendulum. The pendulum hydrostat includes a pendulum and a bar. So when the torpedo changes its attitude in the water, the pendulum moves. The pendulum activates a rod, and the rod moves the hydroplanes at the end of the torpedo. By doing this, the attitude of the torpedo can be adjusted and its stability in the water much improved.
In our test, we want to hit a dummy ship 25 meters away. To match the early torpedo, Bull operated at low speed. The rudders of the Whitehead replica must be adjusted in advance. They can't be corrected after the launch.
The weather's quite good at the moment, but there's a bit of a current, and it's causing the target to drift and the torpedo to drift, and we're going to try and get the two into alignment. When they're in alignment, we can press the button and the torpedo can run. I think we look ready.
Yeah, we look ready. Then we're ready to
Okay, we're ready to go. Torpedo run.
Will the Whitehead torpedo hit our dummy ship?
It's drifting off to the left somewhere.
The torpedo can't hold course even on a calm sea. A diver heads out to recover it.
In the early days of the torpedo, it was actually very difficult to hit a ship. And this is one reason that they would launch several torpedoes at once. A group of torpedoes moving across the ocean, there's a much higher chance of hitting a ship. And your chances are better still if it's a group of ships.
The early torpedoes of the 19th century still had a long way to go before becoming a war-deciding weapon. Theoretically, a Whitehead torpedo is capable of hitting a target from a distance using self-propulsion and depth control, but even a slight current diverts it from its course.
I think it's most unlikely that this would have been a very successful weapon of war. So the idea that they changed the system within 2 or 3 years is really no surprise to me.
It only takes 2 years before the next phase of development begins, and the solution that will revolutionize the torpedo comes from the civilian sector, the gyroscope, invented in 1810 by Johann Gottlieb von Bohrenberger, a professor of physics, mathematics and astronomy at the University of Tübingen. In 1870, a gyroscopic instrument was first added to a torpedo. The Howell torpedo, named after John A. Howell, an American Rear Admiral, uses a gyroscope for stabilization.
The principle of the gyroscope depends on centrifugal force. So providing some force, the gyroscope spins, and now it maintains its stability and direction.
Due to the rotation, an equal force acts outwards at every point on its axis. This keeps the gyroscope stable. In a torpedo, the gyroscope is attached to the rudder via a rod system. When the current pushes the torpedo to the side, the gyroscope automatically corrects the course. Modern torpedoes have a computer chip with a built-in gyroscope function.
Similar technology was used in all sorts of navigational equipment. And even today, an electronic version is still in the smartphone, which knows which way it's facing, however you hold it.
Our next test, a gyroscope-controlled torpedo.
The silver torpedo, here in front of me, has a gyroscope. So in theory, this torpedo will be much more accurate than the old example. The question is, will this experiment demonstrate the point? So the torpedo's pointed at the target, and we're going to start it off. We're ready to go? Go! It's moving a little faster this time.
Thanks to the gyroscope, the torpedo cannot be swayed from its course.
Actually, this is looking good. It's pretty straight. Three, two, one. Actually, an excellent shot, even though I say it myself.
The decisive stage of development. With the addition of the gyroscope, the torpedo will become a strategically vital weapon over the coming decades. For the first time, submarines equipped with torpedoes are used in large numbers during World War I, particularly by the German Empire. From 1914 to 1918, German submarines sank a total of more than 6,000 ships. One of the countless human tragedies is the sinking of the British Lusitania. On May 7, 1915, the German U-20 attacks the passenger ship with a torpedo. Within only 18 minutes, the 239-meter-long ship sinks. Close to 1,200 people perish. Only around a third of the passengers manage to survive. Among the victims are many Americans. This only increases the will of the United States of America to enter the war against Germany. There is only one way to hunt the German submarines: intercepting the radio traffic, a task of the secret services.
Intelligence has been a critical part of war since the dawn of time. Knowing what your enemy knows and making sure he doesn't know what you know gives you an advantage.
World War II begins in 1939. Intercepting German radio traffic is no longer possible. The Nazis use a cipher machine that was developed by Arthur Scherbius in 1918. Its name, Enigma.
In the Second World War, we come to the German Enigma machine, which was invented to deal with the problem that the British had broken German radio signal codes in the First World War and had used them very effectively. So this mechanical electrical encryption system was designed to be unbreakable.
Encryption techniques had been used before, but the Enigma combines different mechanisms into a single complex code.
A very simple encryption technique is to just move along in the alphabet so A becomes B and B becomes C. But this is very easy to crack. Enigma had a different method. Every letter was replaced by another letter, but you didn't always move the same number of letters forward. Enigma itself was a machine similar to a typewriter, and it had 3 rollers that rotated a little bit further with each input. So if you knew the exact position of the rollers, you could calculate how much forward or backwards you needed to move, and you could decode a text perfectly.
For months, Allied specialists have tried in vain to crack the Enigma code. Capturing the crew of a German submarine and, with the help of Polish specialists, they're finally on the track of the mystery. A few radio transmissions are decrypted, but it still takes too much effort and too much time. At this rate, there is no way that they'll stop the terror of the German submarines. An invention from a reclusive mathematician ultimately turns the tides in the brutal Battle of the Atlantic. Alan Turing develops a highly complex deciphering machine nicknamed the Turing machine. It can crack the daily new Enigma encryptions much faster than any other device, making it a predecessor of the modern computer.
In the Battle of the Atlantic, the critical battle of the Second World War, which kept Britain in the war, what the British did initially was to use that information not to fight the enemy, but to make sure the enemy couldn't find the convoys. They would move the convoys away from the submarines. Once they knew where the submarine was, they moved the convoy.
If the ship changes position, the torpedo can't hit anything. Its course can't be changed. The next leap in technology is a torpedo that can self-correct its course. During World War II, the so-called passive process was developed. The torpedo was able to detect the sound of a ship's propeller and steer towards it. Active tracking is perfected during the Cold War arms race. The torpedo itself generates sound waves and heads towards the echo that bounces back from the target. But the torpedo is also a safety risk for the carrier ship. Many accidents occur. On August 12, 2000, the loss of the Russian nuclear submarine Kursk is most likely the result of a defective torpedo. 118 people die. Various carrier systems, including surface ships, airplanes, and helicopters, all play a role in the history of the torpedoes. But submarines are certainly the most important of them all. The US Navy deploys them in formations known as battle groups, a complete squadron of combat ships and submarines. In coordination with an aircraft carrier, they can control entire strategic sea zones.
The aircraft carrier is the ultimate naval weapons system. It's a mobile airfield with 50 or 60 or even 80 frontline combat jets on board. It can move hundreds of miles in a day. It's capable of operating at sea for long periods.
Today, further torpedo developments focus primarily on speed. Now, effective countermeasures like decoys or anti-torpedo weapons are available. But the faster a torpedo reaches its target, the harder it is to fend off. In the future, the navies of the world's superpowers are betting on a completely new technology: supercavitation. With the help of this futuristic technology, torpedoes and potentially even entire submarines will be able to race through the seas at the speed of sound. It utilizes a physics phenomenon. A bubble filled with water vapor almost completely envelops the underwater vessel up to the tip, greatly reducing the flow of resistance. The Russian Navy already has a torpedo with this technology in use, which can achieve a speed of more than 300 kilometers per hour. And so, the race for the most destructive weapon at sea continues.